What are labor unions trying to accomplish? Can working people influence the development of our country's prosperity? How can labor help to build a just and prosperous world? These are some of the vital questions facing the labor movement today, questions that will be discussed in the next few minutes by one of the nation's youngest labor leaders, Al Hayes, recently elected president of the International Association of Machinists. The Machinist Union celebrated its 61st birthday last May with the help of 672,000 sons and daughters, men and women in every industrial community in the United States and Canada. They are men and women who build and service our military and commercial aircraft, who keep America's fleets of trains, buses, trucks, and automobiles in safe, efficient operation, who work in thousands of shops and plants manufacturing and repairing the intricate machinery on which our civilization rests. And now here is their union president, Mr. Hayes.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to have this opportunity to discuss the objectives of organized labor through a medium of communication which reaches into so many homes of Americans. It is important that the objectives of organized labor and of every other organized group within our society be understood by all of us, because in our highly complex civilization, the activities of each are the concern of all, and in the long run, no group can strive for objectives which do not contribute to the common good. I believe that the objectives of organized labor involve an activity by members of trade unions which have played and will continue to play a constructive part in the development of our national economy. I believe also that organized labor, by helping to build a more just and prosperous economy here in America, will contribute greatly to the attainment of freedom and peace throughout the world. America's strength as a nation rests fundamentally on its industrial system. In today's world, a nation which does not have adequate industrial resources is a nation which depends upon others for survival. Because of its industries, the United States now stands on the summit of world power. It is the industrial processes, together with the manufacturing and distributing systems which are linked to them, which made the development of trade unions inevitable in our society. In that society, originally, there was no method, no provision in law or otherwise to safeguard the life, health, or economic interests of those of its members who, in order to live, were obliged to enter industry or trade as wage earners. As Americans in our early industrial history, working people were, in common with others, concerned with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How much liberty and happiness was there, do you think, in those days when men and women were following their jobs into the factory? How could one pursue happiness after working the 12 to 18-hour day among new and dangerous machines for wages which brought only the meanest kind of a living? What happiness could a working man pursue in the dank, disease-ridden tenements which were built for working men? What future for his children did a working man visualize as he saw them trudge away in their tender years to work from daylight to darkness in a textile mill? How about industrial accidents? What happened to the working man when his arm was jerked off by an unguarded machine? Or to his family when his life was snuffed out by an accident on the job? It was problems like these, arising out of a rapidly developing industrial process, which gave birth to organized labor. The working men and women began to petition for a redress of grievances. They began to withhold their labor power as a group. They began to discuss with management working conditions, wages, accidents, and so forth. They established a rational machinery that we now call collective bargaining to deal with the management of industry. With a foundation laid for collective bargaining at their workplace, American workers began to sense what freedom really meant. But labor could not confine its attention to these issues alone. Industry doesn't operate in a vacuum. Society as a whole is involved, and so the trade unions had to spread their efforts from the workplace to include other frontiers. For example, industry is subject to legislation in this country. The action of the courts and the attitude of political leaders is therefore directly related to the abuses which necessitated the organization of trade unions. Working men had to agitate for the elimination of restrictions on the voting franchise in order to use their political strength to protect themselves in industry. The early trade unions led the campaigns which over the years have eliminated property ownership and almost every other qualification on the right to vote. That was a social good for the whole United States. The trade unions had to focus their attention on campaigns to eliminate child labor. They had to for glaringly obvious reasons. It was their children who were the little slaves. That abuse has almost been eliminated, and that too has benefited the whole United States. Because freedom requires understanding and informed action, and because America's early workers wanted to participate in society and to improve their individual well-being, the early trade unions led the campaigns for free public schools. The system which they helped establish has benefited all subsequent generations in America. Such issues as these grow out of the central core of trade union action, and they illustrate the social significance of labor to a country as a whole, and those phases of trade unionism which have to do with hours of work, wages, vacations, etc., are also extremely significant socially to society as a whole. To illustrate, let us consider the subject of wages. Wages in our economy are synonymous with consumer purchasing power. Everybody is a consumer, of course, but it is in the working class families where the great unmet needs prevail. The consuming needs of working people are fulfilled in accordance with the wages they receive for their labor. When wages are high, everybody in the community prospers, and they do so because working people spend their wages in the open market for living commodities. When wages are low, the whole community suffers poverty because working people are obliged to tighten their belts and to reduce their standards of living. The wages of workers constitute the lifeblood of our economy. As the action of trade unions has slowly but surely pushed up the wage levels of their members, they have also brought upward the wages of all other workers. The growing prosperity and power of the country has been aided more by union wage rates than it has by any other single factor. High wages are good for the whole United States. Shortening of the workday is another trade union issue, the benefits of which can be seen everywhere around us. A short workday is necessary, not only to lessen the tragedy of unemployment to a portion of the population, but also to release to those who work sufficient time to enjoy some of the products of their labor and to participate more fully in the civilized existence outside of the factory wall. One aspect of this country's greatness is its tendency to recognize the right of its working class to have free time to enjoy America. The shortened work week and the vacations which are so rapidly becoming standard practice are the fruit of trade unionism. They are good for the entire United States. As to the future, I believe labor will continue to move forward in the shop with respect to such matters as a guaranteed yearly wage, welfare and retirement plans, and so forth. In the larger sphere of social advancement, labor will apply its collective wisdom and its economic power likewise on every other front to advance the welfare of the ordinary common man. This will not be an easy task. It never has been. There have always been powerful interests whose spokesmen have tried to block and destroy labor unions. They are still with us. They are formidable, and they can be ruthless. Our economy is still far from the balance necessary to establish a decent standard of living for everyone and to avoid recurrent unemployment busts and booms. Therefore, the labor movement still has a mammoth task before it. If organized labor does not overcome the barricade set in its path by the Taft-Hartley Act, the power of labor will be destroyed just as it was after World War I. If this should happen, and God forbid, I guarantee the American people will then recognize through tragic experience the social significance of the labor movement. For without effective trade unions, hours will be lengthened, wages will be reduced, unemployment will follow, purchasing power will be shut off, and the downward spiral will be underway. I cannot cite as an example any better illustration than this to express what I mean by the necessity of a strong labor movement in a country like ours, not only for the protection of those who work for wages, but for the good of society as a whole. However, and above all else, I want to express my faith in the future. Even though I am aware of the recession into which we are being maneuvered and of the dangerous ground on which we stand, in earlier history, the labor movement of our country made slow progress against tremendous handicaps by sheer grit and determination and the help of a few stalwart friends outside its ranks. But the world moves on. Labor is stronger today, and it no longer fights alone. Collective action at the ballot box is as rewarding as collective action in industry, as the last election very clearly demonstrated. This is an object lesson the Taft-Hartley Act taught all of organized labor. It is a lesson we will not easily forget. The goal of labor today is the same goal which united the 13 colonies in their struggle for independence. It is the same goal which drew the country's early workmen into their first feeble union. It is the same goal which has raised the labor movement from the weak beginning into a militant force of 15 million men and women. It is a goal of free men everywhere, the attainment of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all mankind. And as a representative of the International Association of Machinists, I pledge that we will be found in the future as we have been found in the past, struggling to preserve those noble objectives whenever and wherever they are threatened.
You have just heard Al Hayes, President of the International Association of Machinists. If you want a copy of Mr. Hayes' talk, just write to the International Association of Machinists, Washington 1, D.C. This program has been brought to you as a public service feature.